I talk to a spirit. She comes in my dreams.
What is the path to awakening supposed to look like, to feel like? How do you know if you are on it? We ask these very sacred and sometimes vulnerable questions to many different women from all walks of life. A conversation that needs to be shared and heard. I'm Jo Hendy.
I'm Amanda Parker.
And welcome to the Girl Awakening podcast. And,
good morning.
It's not Wednesday.
No, and it's not the first either. I've sent my children pinch and punch messages and they both laughed at me.
Oh, yeah.
It's Halloween.
That is.
It's all Hallowed Eve.
Interesting. Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
No veil.
No veil. Welcome back, listeners. It's Thursday and we're going off track a little bit, which is good. Change of days.
Yes.
We love a shift. We love a change.
Bringing different energy into things.
Yes, with a new guest, which we're very excited about. This one's different for our listeners. This is going to be very cool.
Yeah.
I'm already excited about it.
Feeling a little bit pulled into a really anchored space.
Grounded, yeah. So Talia Levy, a Jewish woman who believes in the power of the long line of ancestry that connects us back through time. A line that connects us directly to the days when women knew the power of their bodies, their intuition and their emotion. Embodiment. Seems to be a bit of a word at the moment too. Welcome, Talia.
Lovely to meet you today. Thank you.
So cool. It's a bit warm in here, isn't it?
It is warm. Yeah.
It's probably only going to get warmer now, but yeah. Welcome to the Girl Awakening podcast. We're really honoured to sit in a space with you today. I'm excited to just to hear. Amanda and I are so lucky to get to sit with all these interesting women and just be really open-hearted, open-minded to hear each woman's journey, because it's so interesting. Everyone is so different.
Yeah. It is. We've all got little nuggets for each other. Hey, we've all got little bits of gold, and our paths cross and our stories cross, and sometimes in the circles, like women's circles, you get that sense of the many faces of the goddess. Like you hear other women's stories and you see yourself in their stories and you see the goddess in each woman, and that we all have these powerful pieces for each other. So I can imagine how much we get out of it. How much. It's funny, I just said to my daughter and her friend the other day, we're all just here to walk each other home. And they went, wait, what? What did you just say? Let's say that again. And it's true. Yeah.
Every person that we sit with in front of has something for us. Yeah. To lead us. Yeah.
And you've actually also turned the boat around and asked us a couple of questions, which is kind of been fun.
It's great. I'm curious what, what drives us? What are we here for? What are we serving? And that was such a big question for me around the storytelling work that I've been doing.
Yeah, we will talk about that because it's really interesting. But we're going to jump straight in. Do you want to ask
the first question? Is how did your awakening begin, Talia?
Yes. Well, it's a tricky question to know where to start, because as we kind of spoke to before, it's happening all the time. Like we're constantly awakening. And I think particularly in regards to the title of this podcast, The Girl Awakening, it makes me think of this storytelling course that I was on earlier in the year. And that's been a huge part of my awakening. And part of what happened in that course was I told a biographical story. I told the story of the first time that I remembered being caught out in a moment of pure rapture, like pure interest, pure curiosity. And in that moment, a girl, I was curious about this girl, staring at her across the room, and then she looked at me, and we're in a school classroom. Why are you staring at me? And I was just looking, I was curious. But that moment that I learned that my curiosity was dangerous, and I think, so through the telling of this story and going on and telling the story when I was bullied as a child, and realizing how much was shut down, how much my expression, my creativity, my curiosity was shut down through these tiny little moments throughout school. And then telling the story of that and saying, hang on a second, I'm here to express, I'm here to be curious, I'm here to create, and I'm going to tell this story differently, you know? And I think that that element of the awakening around the storytelling and around my voice and my expression and my desire to really show up in the world for what's coming through me, and to not let the little voices of being stifled and being caught out get in the way. That was really big.
It's really powerful. Just in that moment, I can feel where you had a feeling come up around connection with another soul, and that the soul possibly didn't understand it, so it was just a go into fear, which is a lot of the reason why we do shut down, isn't it? Because other people can't or don't know what to do with what they're feeling. And we're just especially as little girls, we're very sensitive, we're very attuned, and little things can have a huge, and they do have a huge impact. That's why so many of us need to come through these awakenings of realizing what happened that kind of gave us these little voices in our heads that say, oh, you can't, or you're not good enough, oh, you shouldn't, all the tiny little voices. They were voices when we were children. And we call them voices of judgment.
Yes. It's
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean that was one big part of the most recent awakening, was connected to my voice and to my clarity that I have things to say and I want to say them, you know, and the storytelling is part of that. But storytelling is interesting because it's not necessarily about my voice, it's about the voice of the soul, you know, the world soul, and speaking directly to that. And so I had to clear my own channel first so I could get out of my own way, so that what wanted to come through me had a free path,
vessel,
you know. Otherwise it was like I would shut it down all the time because my own voice wasn't liberated. So I had to really understand the ins and outs of where it shut down to be able to clear it out and allow fresh.
I love that.
Come through.
You know, it's funny, right from when you first started, I was thinking, when you speak, it's like
melody.
Yeah, but it's also like you're, I don't know what it is, like you're gathering.
Weaving.
Somebody
beautiful.
At the storytelling, I've got this big, like 45-minute storytelling offering that I've done. And the feedback I've had from that is like, it's like you're talking without speaking. Like there is something, and we all have a power in our voices, but there is like
a resonance.
And
or an echo. That's the other thing too. It's like an echo. Like it's, you know.
So what I want to ask in that regard is, like, when you were talking before around the voice of the collective or the world voice, and your own differing between your own voice, how did that even occur to you that they were different?
I mean, I can hear it and I can feel it, and I think we all can, you know. We chit chat, and then someone says something and we like something comes through, and then somebody says, what did you just say? I'm not sure. And that, you know, that's not me. That's me having enough space in my being to allow a voice to come through. And particularly like what you read out before, like for me it's an ancestral connection, and it's a very strong time in the world right now. And you know, we don't know a lot. Like if we think about the indigenous ways of knowing and being and perceiving the world, it was this vast interconnected experience of reality. And most of us in our modern day walk around with our blinkers on, and we have a very narrow view, and it's very much about us and our own little experience of the world, which is important and valid, and we have a lot of healing to do, and it's great, but there's a lot more available to us. And so
let's talk about that.
Yes. Okay. Which bit?
That bit, the bit where there's so much more to us, there's so much more available.
Yeah.
What do you feel in that space? Like, even if we talk about now, where we're at now, like
like right here in this space.
Just planetary.
Oh gosh.
And how you relate to that, or where you sit in that space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are so many layers. You know, we live here in Southern Gold Coast. I'm in northern New South Wales, and we live pretty amazing lives. Like, we have access to everything we could want. We have these beautiful beaches. We have these stunning lives, and then we have these internal worlds that are generally a little bit tormented and struggling with our own stuff and our relationships and our interpersonal dynamics and our ability to make ends meet. We have our inner world, and then that inner world kind of comes up against this bigger outer world where there is war, where there is suffering that is almost too grand to comprehend. It's too much for us to even grasp. And so then I know for myself, I come up against a lot of guilt around the life I live and the privilege that I have. And then I have to work with that in the different ways that I do. So, you know, it's challenging. Yeah.
Because even in what you just shared then, you immediately get taken out into a very big space, don't you? Like, just
it's almost like overwhelming space.
It's like that. It's like that moment where you're seeing yourself standing on Earth, and then you get pulled out into the galaxy, and you're like so insignificant. And it's a feeling of awe in that beautiful way. But when you were talking around the humanness of the planet, it's a feeling of powerlessness, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is. And where do we go for wisdom?
Yes.
You know, who do we look to? Because in so much of the world there is so much polarization that you have to be on a side. You have to be on a side. And if you're not on a side, then you're apathetic. And I often get met with that because I have my identity, I have my community, I have this, but I don't feel like I'm on a side. And I'm still discovering the places where I am, but I actually don't think it's my natural inclination. Like, I don't move toward conflict. I don't move toward butting up. My natural inclination is to kind of go under and want to understand. And if I don't understand, I'll just sort of step back. So where to go for wisdom when you know, we often look to the rhetoric, the opinion that reinforces our own.
So this kind of makes me want to go back to what you said earlier around your ancestral lineage. Like, what's your relationship in that space? Because I feel like this is a powerful.
It's a powerful one, and I can feel myself skirting around it. It's contentious and it's not comfortable. And it was a big part of the storytelling journey of, you know, so my family is Jewish. There was one point where I was convinced I was Indigenous. I had this image of myself walking through the desert with a sack of coconuts. Well, I was actually walking through the desert in Mexico with a sack of... I was on the beach with a sack of coconuts. But I felt like I was in the desert, and I had this image of these two ancestral lines, and one was from the deserts of Israel, Canaan, Palestine, however you want to speak the language of that place name, and the other was from the Central Desert in Australia. So sure that I was Indigenous. I took my family on this trip to Broome because my dad's family had originally come to Broome and they were Pearls, and I was sure that there was something that happened. Anyway, there wasn't. I couldn't. But I think what it was speaking to was that vision was the indigeneity of all of us, and the, like, so many of us so cut off from our ancestry that we feel like a lack of belonging. And so for me as a woman, a Jewish woman, I feel this actual privilege in knowing my ancestral roots, in knowing that there are traditions, that there are ways of being, of speaking, values that are being passed down from generation to generation to generation over thousands of years. And I've never been religious. My family was never religious. To me, that identity, that ancestry isn't a religion, it's a bloodline, it's a culture, it's a tradition. Some would call it an ethnicity. And so in part of my journey and my awakening was the moment when I realized that Abraham, who is the father of monotheistic religion, is the father of Judaism, Islam and Christianity, that he was the father of monotheism. So what came before monotheism? Well, I'd only recently learned that before monotheism and patriarchy there was paganism, polytheism, matriarchy. And so when I made the connection that Abraham, my ancestry, my lineage, was responsible for the downfall of the matriarchal societies, you know, it's a shortcut. Like, it's not a truth, but in my mind, there was like, oh my gosh, my ancestry is responsible for this, and I don't enjoy that. I'm not a fan of the patriarchy. What about that society where women were at the center, where we were interconnected with the earth? And so I felt it as a very heavy weight.
Yeah, I feel that, don't you?
Yeah,
I can feel that.
Yeah.
And I also love the way you say we're women, we're the leaders in society. You just do this like automatic triangle.
The womb was at the center, the birth was revered. Like, there is so much in the women's mysteries, and this realization came to me in the School of Shamanic Womancraft. So I don't know if you've Jane Hardwick Collins. So when I was
she's
in
responsible
that,
for so many amazing women.
I can believe it.
Incredible
she's
soul.
an incredible woman.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to her. And it was her, the Hearth Street book that she's got. Realizing, but then for me it was lining that up with Abraham, with the beginning of my people in inverted commas, and so that lent the question, well, if Abraham was the first monotheist, then his wife, his half sister Sarah, she wasn't a monotheist. If he was the first, then she wasn't a monotheist. She didn't believe in one God. So what did she believe? So what does the feminine line of my ancestry carry in terms of belief and ritual and practice? And that question was very difficult to answer.
Yeah, it's
what
a
a
big
beautiful question. Yeah, I was going to say, what a beautiful question to even ponder that for you yourself. To like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, because in my childhood, the story, we all grow up with stories, and some of we just read books, but like in my school, I went to a Jewish school, and the stories were of the men.
Yeah.
We heard about Abraham, about Isaac, about Jacob, great. I knew who some of the women were, but we didn't hear their stories. And what I've come to appreciate is that, of course, we didn't, because the stories were written down. When society changed, we don't need to go into all that, but they were written down, and at the time it was men who wrote.
Yeah.
And so the men wrote down the stories, and the men can't and don't know what the lives of women are like. They're not supposed to, And so the women's stories kind of got left. The men's stories got frozen in time, and that's what was passed down over and over and over again. And I just got to this I know I've gone deep into my own femininity, into my own power as a woman, into my womb space, into my all of it, and
my relationship with self,
with body, with spirit, and how it moves through me, and that's a lot of what Jane's work is and has taught me, and I just couldn't stomach that this ancestral lineage, this ancient lineage that I'm part of, doesn't carry women's wisdom, and so I had to look deeper. And in that journey, what I discovered is that actually in the spiritual religious circles, there is great respect for women and the power of the feminine. And it is that thing where it's kind of kept behind a veil and under a wig, and it's definitely that, and that's contentious for sure. But it is paired with a deep reverence and respect for the feminine and for women. But I wasn't religious, so I didn't get that. And I wasn't alternative, so I didn't get the empowered woman thing. I just got the traditional stories.
Yeah.
Which often comes through, as you say, like, the school, the mainstream mediums that we're easily, we are growing up amongst, until you have that point of non-acceptance and choose to dig deeper and ask more questions, and you get your curiosity back.
Yes. and the courage to follow it.
The courage, and ask questions, because I remember one of my early clients was a beautiful Jewish woman, and she was definitely a very strong woman, and her and her husband held equal, I'll say, leadership, but she was definitely the head of the family, if you want to say that, and held in great respect by everybody in the family.
And I think that's something that I hear, like, it is a cultural kind of thing, in the Jewish families, that there is often a lot of respect for the woman, and it is a value. And I think I think it is in all of us. Like it was in all of us, but because there's this unbroken line, there's a lot that stayed, but it's just a bit more hidden. It's not what we claim to be about, or there's so many factions. I can't speak for Jewish people. I can just speak from my own experience, but
and discovery of lineage and discovery of connection to, I guess, as you say, the paganism and I think you said something before when before we started, around when people sit in a circle and look around at the different faces of the goddesses in circle. That really just resonated beautifully. And
it's interesting because in the Old Testament, we call it the Torah, there's quite a few references to two goddesses in particular. One is Asherah and one is Ashtarte. And the goddesses around the world, they all carry, like, there's they're kind of evolutions of each other a lot of the time. Inanna, the oldest Sumerian goddess, became Hathor, became Asherah, Ashtarte, Aphrodite. Like they're often linked in their stories. And in the Old Testament, in the Bible, these goddesses are named, but they're condemned. And their worship, and their worship is often blamed, like the Israelites, as they were called, not the Jewish people. The Jewish is quite a new term, but the Israelites were punished because they were worshipping the goddess. This is what's written in their book, and to me, like, I didn't even know the goddess is named in the Torah. I didn't learn that as a child, but when I learned that, I thought, okay, one of the things that Jane always says is wherever there's an aspect of the feminine that is condemned, it's a clue to its power.
Yes,
that's and it's such a helpful little indicator and clue to what's going on. Because of course they were condemned. Yeah. They were powerful. Yeah. And they threatened the power of others. They threatened the power of the dominant agenda of the time. And so they're reading this, understanding that, hang on a second, I've been taught that worshipping, not, like, I don't worship the gods, but even speaking to is what's that word? Idolatry is, not okay, sacrilegious. Yes. But there they are in my ancestry for hundreds and thousands of generations. My ancestors worshipped, honored, revered the goddess, the temples, the earth, the woman's body. It's in my ancestry not that long ago. Yeah. The last exile from the Babylonian exile that was just before the Christ period. My history is not amazing, but that last exile, one of the prophets was saying, well, that's because you were worshipping the goddess. And and then I kind of go, hang on a second, was it, or is it the other way around? You know, like, is the condemnation of the worship of the goddess responsible? Like, I don't know how directly karma is responsible for everything that goes on or not, but
it's a funny thing, because what you're also sharing is like this loop that we're in around you know, power struggles, whether it's around country and politics, or whether it's, you know, whether it's patriarchal society or a matriarchal society. It's like this loop of constantly trying to establish power and control. Whereas, and I think history reflects that when it's a matriarchal society, it usually runs for a longer length of time than the patriarchal societies, or that, you know, what happens in those matriarchal societies, the term of how the communities and people thrive is a different dynamic.
And the different nature of the power, like, is it power with, or is it power over?
Yes.
Is it power that comes from beneath that lifts everybody up, or is it power that comes from above and dominates everybody down? You know, and I think it's why I don't get into the political sides too much, because it's all the same. It's all the same, and everybody needs to be right and needs the other person to be wrong. The other side, the other nation, the other religion, whatever it is. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm more pious, I'm more moral. My cause is more divine, whatever it is. It's something that I'm better than you, and so I'm doing what I'm doing, and it's necessary for the benefit of the world. And I just can't put my whole heart into engaging in that conversation.
Of course.
Yeah.
How do you navigate through your life now, like knowing all that, having all that information on, and how does that work for you?
It's a challenge, and I think it's part of this journey with my voice. Because it's very vulnerable to put yourself out there in this climate. Particularly as a Jewish person, a lot of Jewish people are feeling very terrified.
It's very hot, isn't it?
And standing in the middle, or refusing to take a side, refusing to say one is better than the other, nobody likes that. No, you know, there's except for my friends, except for the few people who I can sit in that conversation with, around the mystery, around the unknown, around the, like, confusion and all that
uncertainty,
kind of because that's where we're sitting, in the mystery. I don't know that I'm better than you. I don't know that I know more than you. My sense is that anyone who's sure that they know, come on. How can you know?
Exactly.
How can you know what it's like to be on the other side of that wall?
And it's changing and shifting in every moment.
So the girl that left school, what did she do? Going back to when you were young, like when you went to high school and things, just to try. Which girl?
Which
girl left school?
The girl that left school. Okay.
As in you.
I went. So when I finished school, I was part of a youth movement throughout my schooling years. It was a Jewish Zionist. Zionism didn't used to be a dirty word. So it was a Jewish Zionist socialist youth movement that believed in Tikkun Olam, which is roughly translated as heal the world. And so I went to Israel for a year and I spent time in kibbutz, in socialist settings. I spent time, it was a program, so we had 3 months in the socialism kind of aspect of it. We had 3 months in the north working with Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs in like coexistence, so peace work, a mild version of it. We were young, but some version of that, and time learning about the history.
Big space.
It's a big space, and you know the reality of it is that it was agendaed. It was, and it was a peaceful left-wing movement that advocated for peace, but it was also a movement that advocated for the existence of Israel. And so I didn't learn as much about the Palestinian plight as I did about the socialist movement that grew Israel.
How did that feel at the time? Like, what did you
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
You know, and then later you learn a bit more, and I'm still learning a lot about the Palestinian experience and the Palestinian narrative of what's unfolded, and it's I feel like it's very important to know and to learn, and I feel like as I get older and as I become more aware of where I sit in this cesspool of anger, you know, and blame, what I know beyond anything is that I just don't know. Like, I can learn, you know, I spent my whole life as a Jewish woman. I went to a Jewish school. I went and did this year-long program in Israel. So I have a lot more knowledge and information about the Jewish, Zionist, Israelite, you know, like I know all that. I don't know the Palestinian and the Arab story as well. But what I do know is that any action is coming from somewhere that hurt people, that we're just reliving and recreating the things that were done to us and the traumas that we've experienced and the pain and the lack of belonging and the lack of control and, you know, the domination, all this stuff that that us as a global society has been through, you know, we've been, as a collective, we've been through a lot the last hundreds, thousands of years. And so while I strive to learn as much as I can about the other side, in inverted commas, what I know is it doesn't actually matter, because whatever they're doing because they were hurt. Just like whatever we're doing because we're afraid, we're hurt. So
it's interesting, because I was listening to a gentleman speaking the other day in the space, and he's a Jewish man but philosopher and incredibly smart man, and he was talking around the meanings of words like shalom, and you know how in the tree of life, and when you break down some of these ancient principles, things are very different to the modern meanings that they've been given and the way that they've been portrayed and things like that. And what I hear you just saying in that space is that there's a lot of angry stories and hurt stories just thick in this space, trapping everybody in this continual loop of whatever that is all about. And how do we as a collective, how do we as a humanity, you know, dissolve that pain and anger and create space for everything to become new again? And you know, because there's so much history there that is just holding everybody in a very tormented space, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think it circles back around to that power over, you know, as opposed to power under. Like the healing comes in the power under. As long as there's one side trying to get power over the other, they're just going to keep stepping on each other's heads and keep searching for this top position of power. And I think that's why I'm telling, you know, these stories, the stories of the women, stories of my ancestral line that was not written down. That's why I'm opening myself to hear those stories, because I believe that it's the power of the feminine that is the medicine we need. It's the circle, it's the big hug, it's the big everybody is welcome here, let's bring everybody in here. You know, it's very philosophical and beautiful, but we've got to start somewhere. We've got to turn to a different paradigm. Because I'm right, you're wrong, you're right. This right and wrong.
The duality is just rife.
And
the thing that I'm feeling just from what you're saying is, you know, it's, I know my husband likes to call it the micro and the macro, what's happening on the planet. And the only way that we can, you know, walk ourselves through it is by going within and dealing with our own war inside, and then connecting with others, which is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
You know, and for you and for us, it's like-minded women that innately have that like womanly, nurturing, beautiful, soft, gathering side inside of them that are all longing to be seen and heard and felt.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I'm getting. It's not about religion. It's not about any of those things. It's about seeing each other for who we are, and then if we do that on our own level, you know, there is a way through. And I think with the planet the way it is, when we look at it as a whole, there's a lot of people that are having their eyes, you know, opened up to the bullshit and the lies and the betrayal and even the lies in history, you know, we're finally being opened up to.
Yeah.
So you have to question everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
Oh, curiosity again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do. You just can't believe anything you're told until you feel it within and it's your truth. You know, then it's the truth.
Yeah. And it starts with us.
Yeah.
Exactly like you're saying, it's an inside job. You know, like if I was thinking, because I'm feeling, you know, this work and that storytelling and this passion that's coming through, this voice that needs to be spoken, it's a voice for peace. And
expansion.
And expansion.
Oh, I love that word.
Yeah.
Inclusion.
And so I think about, where is the conflict in my own life? Where is it internally? Where is it in relationship? And not little petty, you know, but like big, where's the people who I'm like, I've othered them.
Yeah.
They're not my friends.
Yes.
And, you know, what do I need to do to learn the muscle of peace building?
Yeah.
And repairing relationships? Because we other, we dismiss, we separate. That's
it's easy.
It's easy. Yeah, and it's what we're being taught. You know, it's our enculturation, and so finding, like, it starts inside, and then it starts in the closest relationships, and then it starts in the, you know, it's the layers out. And I think one of the biggest, the contagion of conflict, and that there's conflict happening on the other side of the world, but now it's in my community. People are arguing, conflicting over what's happening on the other side of the world.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, we're just growing conflict. Like
do you think sometimes, sorry to interrupt, but do you think sometimes that's just so they don't have to look at their own shit?
I do think that anybody who's projecting their anger at an external cause is not looking at their own anger.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%.
I think anybody who's saying that that someone else is evil is disassociating from their own evil, like from their own pain body. Like every time we push down our own pain, our own little, you know, we've all got those moments where we're not kind, where we're not nice, where we're a bad person. Like we all have those parts of us. Nobody's perfect, nobody's a saint. And so every time we just push that down, my kind of perception of it is that we're adding to this global phenomenon of evil, and we're putting our evil over there and saying, look, it's them, and it's not me. I'm a good person. I would never do something like that. But we're contributing to it by disowning those parts of ourselves.
I understood. I never understood when people said it's about the collective. You know, the collective consciousness. And I never understood what that meant. I thought it meant something else. And then when I talked more about it with friends that, you know, you can talk to things about, I was getting more about that clearing your own way through is actually clearing it out there as well. You know, and the more people are doing that, the more we can change it out there. Like it's not woo-woo and it's not magic. It's available. You know?
Yeah. It's where we started. It's like there's so much more available to us than what we think. Yeah. We have so much more of an impact on the world than what we think, even if we're sitting at home meditating. And that's why they do it. That's why the monks in India do it. They sit in the cave and meditate because they're impacting the world. They're trying to bring balance. And our internal states and our how we navigate internally impacts the world around us. You can feel it when somebody walks into a room and they're carrying anger inside, or they're carrying peace, and so you can feel that. So of course it's impacting the world.
And the dichotomy of that is this whole like AI thing that's starting to come out and distract us, like the distractions that are there to stop us from collectively clearing our own way through.
Yeah.
No, have this.
Yeah.
Do this. Have this phone. Look at this. Do this. You have to do this. And it's just continually just trying to distract us. The energy fields. It's like so interesting. It's like we really have to start being so discerning about what we're playing with.
And and I think the key to it is the internal tracking. Because if you can track what's going on inside you, man, I feel calm, I feel relaxed, I can feel my body, then probably whatever I'm doing in that state, I'm okay. But if I can track when I start to get stressed and my system starts to feel like this, and even I might look the same on the outside, but if I'm aware that that's going on, then that's an indication that what I'm doing, what I'm eating, what I'm playing with, whatever it is, isn't serving.
Have you developed
a tracking device?
Yes. That was basically it. How do you have that relationship with yourself? What's your internal tracking technique?
And this is the thing with women.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's the same for men, but I just feel women really have this strongly in them.
And want to as well.
Want to,
And I think we have our cycles. We have the ability to track, I think it's different in a way. I mean, I've never been a man, but
you may have in one life.
That's true. Our baseline changes with our cycle for those of us who are bleeding, and so I know that before my cycle comes, like my fuse is shorter. I know those things about myself. So tracking the cycle is a really helpful one to kind of be able to read the baseline, keeping which means like keeping track of your mood, your what you're eating, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, like keeping track for a few good years, and it changes over time, but keeping track has helped me discover that baseline. And then I think it's like a fine-tuning process, it's so much, I've done a lot of work in one particular shamanic lineage where we really talk about the silence and being in the silence and knowing, it's just a state of being where you're fully able to interact but what's pulling me out of the silence? When is my mind not thinking in a way that is
flowing
or like useful or I'm not thinking, I'm not trying to think, my mind's running, when's my mind running the show? I guess would be the question. And having like practices, I mean, a lot of people use meditation. I've done a lot of vision questing, so I've spent many days in the bush by myself,
epic,
fasting with water, to really find that place in myself and build my I think about it as like building the pathways. Like if you think about the neuroscience stuff, where we have these neurological pathways that are the paths we've always walked, the habits that we always do, the ways we always think. It's like we have those in our brain, and then to create new ones we have to walk them a lot of times. Like it's like that path through the forest. At first there's no path, then you walk it and it starts to become, and the more you walk that path, the more of a path there is. So I've found vision questing, one of the ways I've engaged with it is like walking that path of silence over and over again, learning my baseline, learning how my baseline is the same as the baseline of nature, and then knowing when I'm not in that, because I know what it's like when I am in that.
Does intuition play a big part in that too?
Well, I think that it's the open channel,
natural thing.
Like when the baseline, like when we're
in the groove.
Like when we're in with nature. When we're at the same resonance of nature, because we are nature. So when we're resonating at that same frequency, then like is it intuition, or is it just the world soul? Like, is it just the universe communicating with us? Is it just my being communicating with that animal over there, and that's why I know, oh, there's a snake there, you know, because we're communicating, because that's how much is available to us, is to be that in tune with the rest of the world, because we are one.
It's the beautifulness of that is just gorgeous, and that, you know, as you say, that telepathy that comes through being in that resonance. You know,
it's a beautiful thing.
And again, we sort of talked about this morning with like just a bit around, you know, Gaia and her calling us, and you know, we've been ignoring her for so long, but the voice is getting louder and louder, calling us back, and it's so healing in all the ways, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we do our best. You know, like, we don't. Okay, I want to live in this world. I don't want to go and live in a cave in India and meditate on behalf of the world. I'm here to live. I'm here to interact. I'm here to have these conversations. I'm here to share the stories. You know, and so I can't be in that state of silence and deep resonance with the earth all the time. I mean, I probably could. But I'm not there yet.
Well, we do live on.
You have purpose with other things as well.
I just wanted to go like to add to what you've just been talking about, which is so amazingly beautiful, is a lot of trust has to come into that as well. I've got a friend who's done some vision quests, and she loves all of that, the wild woman, all of those things. And we went away with her a couple of years ago, and we were up north walking through the bush, and I was really fearful of snakes. And she said, "But you love Mother Earth, Joey, and you know you're connected, and so why are you scared of snakes?" I said, "Because they could bite me. Why would they want to bite you?" And it really made me think, you know, like how much I wasn't trusting in the resonance of me with Mother Earth, and the trusting in the two, and even the animals, what you're saying, when you really let go and nothing's going to come out of the bush and bite you if you're not, you know, it's all those, what do you call them, connections and so forth with everything out there.
Coherence, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's and for me, it's the calm inside, you know, that makes that available. And we're so busy in our lives, and you know, that's when we get caught off guard, is when we're like out, you know, even like for your example, like if you're out in nature and thinking, well, of course a snake can come.
Or the bugs or the mozzies.
I mean, the bugs will get you no matter how
you are. Is that really true?
It's a matter how much you care about it.
It's wild, isn't it?
I have a funny thing with mosquitoes. So I have a funny thing with mosquitoes. Not so much out in the wild, because they're, you know, that's their space. But in my home, if I'm in a negative space, mosquitoes. If I'm in a good space, and you know, no mosquitoes. It's like it's an attraction thing. It's like
Well, my husband started. He does one-on-one work with people, and we've created this space outside, like right in front of the creek, and it's beautiful. But there's marchflies, and he was saying to me that they come along, and he's got like little draping things that he puts over his clients and that, because he's you know, concerned about it. But he said as soon as they pop through something, they all go away.
Wow.
And he's like, I've seen it with all of his clients. He said, I've seen it now. They just go away.
Wow.
It's like we're not focused on it at all.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting.
But also the resonancy. I just feel like there's a reason why they are buzzing.
They're like, we'll leave you alone now. They're biting you to make you look at something.
I don't know. I got 2 little mosquito bites on my cheeks the other night in bed when I was asleep. Maybe I was having bad dreams. I don't know.
It's such a beautiful thing. Like, even these conversations, you know, we're talking about nature, we're talking about the connection with Mother Earth, and there's so much in that. Like, I'm getting it more and more with my move with the trees, and how, you know, you can sit out there and be with the trees instead of be with your phone. And it's just, the fulfillment is lasting. It's hard to explain, but it
nourishes deeply.
It's very deep, and I'm learning that, and it's really beautiful. So everything you're saying, I'm just, you know,
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
So much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what is it that you do now with your work to bring that connection in and that, you know, with other women? Besides the storytelling?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I mean, my work is in an evolutionary phase.
Yeah.
So there's the storytelling. I work with nature philosophy.
Yep.
And we run these family camps and vision quests. So that's a big part of my work, is creating it's the Wild Village camp, and it's creating these village experiences where the whole family can come along and have that. You know, the women have time with the women, the men have time with the men, the children go out on adventures with mentors who are excited about being out in the bush and discovering new things and walking up the hills and exploring the dams. So it's this kind of 360 opportunity to connect as a family for people, and I think that is it's very impactful. It's a week, but it's this thing of people come and they get immersed in this village culture, this which is so ancient to us, this you know, where we once knew what it was to live for the good of the whole rather than the good of ourselves.
Community.
That we were only part of, you know, that was the baseline. That was how we existed. The individual wasn't as important as the whole. Yeah. And now we've swung deeply the other way, and it's all about the individual. Yeah. And so in these village experiences, it's like a taste of what is it to be with a large group of people who's connecting to and caring for the good of the whole rather than just the good of the self. And we all do that to different degrees, and the people who have been to many of these camps have exercised that muscle, you know, and they're holding that culture, and others are coming into it and feeling it and getting little bits, but then we're all walking away and living that a little bit more in our lives. So I feel very passionate about those.
Yeah, I love that the family are all getting to calibrate together.
Yes.
So it's not just one person. Because that's often the thing when you go somewhere as an individual and you come back to your environment. You know, you sort of get pulled out of it quickly because you're trying to hold a space, inviting everybody in. But when you all go, you're all in the bubble, and you come home, and the home environment changes, and the space gets to hold for a lot longer, and hopefully for long.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So these little workshops that you run, because there's a few different ones I've heard around. There's one where you can be naked and they go out and you go out into the bush and you have to build your own dwelling and fire making and all that. Then there's another one where you go, I think maybe in underwear or togs, and you sit just in one circle and there's a group of people like in the bush everywhere, and they just do this one drum, and you've got to make your way back.
Yes.
In the dark.
Not what the village is doing.
And you have someone.
Well, you've done several of these. Let's do a recollecting.
I'm just thinking.
I can see her face.
I'm just thinking about when you were talking about really tuning in, right? Really tuning in. Because my girlfriend's done this, and she said, "What you have a guide, and you have to have you're blindfolded, and you have to sit in the circle for I think it might be like maybe 8 hours,
right?
And then they do one drum,
right?
And it's like one of those beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Like that exact thing that you're describing, I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't been part of that, but elements of it for sure, and definitely what you're saying about attuning and having, you know, as many of your senses.
Yes.
Particularly the felt sense, like as many of the senses excluding sight.
Yes.
Because we rely so heavily on sight. So the whole idea of blindfolded and naked, it's really about letting your body be with
the guide.
Yeah.
Oh, she said it was incredible.
It's definitely incredible, and it's you know, it's edgy.
Very
sure,
edgy. Oh yeah, she's done it twice.
Yeah.
The first one she cried.
Yeah.
Because she didn't make it back.
Yeah.
But she got eaten alive.
Yeah.
And then the second one, she made it back, and she cried because she made it back, and she was so proud of herself. Yeah. But the guide that's with them, no words, so even if you go right off track and you're lost.
Wow, I'm curious what this is.
Yeah,
it sounds a bit like next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going to the storytelling.
Yeah.
So as young Talia explored around the world a little bit, obviously, like you travelled when you were younger.
Yes.
And then coming back, how did you settle into finding life here?
Well, I mean, there was multiple stages of it. So I went and did that year away, and then I came back and I studied law. And I went to India at some point in that and realised that in India was where I first learned about the matriarchy, and I think that was where that first trip to India really planted the seed of, hang on, I actually need to get out of my community, because the Jewish community is very tight and connected. So I needed to go beyond that to discover this thing about the women, like what is it about the women. So I finished that degree and I went and travelled with this question of what else is out there, how do other people live. I came into the sense of my body, okay, this is a woman's body, it's different from a man's, why is it different, what's that about, and asked all those questions. And was travelling for 2 years as a gypsy, like just thought I would be a gypsy for the rest of my life. And then at some point on that journey I got this image of like an old woman, she was a midwife, and I could see her, and I typed into Google shamanic midwifery. I had no idea about Jane or anything, but I found the school of shamanic midwifery. I was in Mexico at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I typed shamanic midwifery because I thought I would go find some shamanic midwife in Brazil. But no, it turns out it took me back to Australia. And so then I made my way back to Australia, and I did that work with Jane, and I worked with her for 4 years. I did the whole apprenticeship, and I moved up to this area. I was from Melbourne, and I moved up to this area, and I studied permaculture, and I was finding my way of how to live this connection with the earth, how to live as a woman, like really trying to figure it all out. I met Katie and Sam from Nature Philosophy and started doing work with them, and I trained to be a teacher. Because I love kids, and because I didn't want to push for my passion. You know, this storytelling, it's a passion. Like I want to do storytelling workshops and share it, but I don't want to be hustling for my passion. And I love kids, and we always need teachers, and so I'm an early childhood teacher.
Oh, fantastic.
You know, and I feel like that to me is really important, that I can just work and, you know, make the money I need to make, and that my passion doesn't become my stress and the thing that I'm like hustling. I'm just not into I care about my nervous system. You know, I want to feel relaxed.
But kids also need space.
You know, totally. And I've got a lot to bring. I want to bring it to the kids. You know, they're the ones who need it. They're the ones who are going to be influencing the world.
And they sense you too as well. They're much more open, and they feel you, I imagine. I really love that work, and I haven't been able to do it so much because I've been doing a lot of camps and programs, but just being with the little kids, the 3 to 5 year olds, it's just so that's sort of my day job, and then I've kind of come to this place where I'm happy to have a day job, and then I'm also wanting to continue to follow the things that are lighting me up, and you know, I'm a creative being, like we all are, and so I need to keep creating and following the passions and the interests and the things that are wanting to come through, as well as tending to the little fresh shoots of our children. So that's kind of where I've landed right now in this, like I'm doing both.
Beautiful.
Feels very harmonious, because I mean I think one of the most pure senses of being a teacher is a storyteller in a way, isn't it, really? Because you know, you're caring for them, nurturing them, guiding, but you also, you know, the storytelling is part of the learning experience.
Absolutely. And they're in that world.
The curiosity.
The curiosity, and the soul, like the stories, you know, they speak to a different part of us. And as adults, we need it because we're so disconnected from that part of us. But children, they live there. So you tell them a story and they get it. It doesn't make them think, it just makes them understand. It's their map to understanding the world, and the stories we tell are really powerful.
Yeah. So you did say on your website you're doing them monthly. Are you still doing them monthly just for, how does that work?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm doing a storytelling group.
Yes.
So it's because I went and I did this incredible course. I studied intensively for 3 months, learned all these ways to tell a good story, and I wanted to keep doing it. I wanted to keep practicing with other people and sharing what I learned. You know, there's people who are telling stories around here, and I'm very much talking about oral storytelling.
Yes.
There's people who are doing that, but there's no real community around it.
Yeah.
And I want community. I love working with other people, and I want to do it together. So I'm doing this weekly storytelling group.
Oh, cool.
That's sharing their skills and techniques and having a space to practice and tell stories and build confidence. To tell a good story.
Yes.
So like an open mic night kind of thing.
No.
So
there will be.
Okay.
So the idea is that it will result in places where people can come and hear stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
But at the moment we're not there because there aren't enough people who feel confident
Yes.
to tell a story.
Yes.
So
we're training.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we're learning
exciting.
how they're helping us in our lives. So, I just feel like
I love that. It's like the world of true fantasy.
our own true fantasy, whatever that is.
Yes.
How we interpret it.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it the imagination is where all things are created?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not the thinking mind, it's the imagination.
Yeah. Yeah, which I tend to think of as the collective soul.
Yeah.
You know, the world soul. It's like when I'm telling a story or when I'm working with a story, one of the exercises we do in these groups is, you know, close your eyes and go to a scene in your story, a still frame, a moment in time, and tell me what trees are there. What's the weather doing? Who else is in the room? What color is the dress that she's wearing? These questions, and as you ask the storyteller these questions, and they've got their eyes closed and they're in the scene of the story, it's all there.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yes.
You know, what's the imagination? How is it that when I'm telling a story, you see the image that I'm speaking to? Is it just the words, or is it that I'm helping your soul through my words tap into a greater consciousness, a different layer of this world that we're most of the time not paying attention to. Yeah.
Oh, I can feel my soul craving that world. You know, when you talk about it, it's like, well, you just got me all tingly with Anethia. So I can feel. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you big time. So beautiful.
And I loved because I love reading a book, and I find it difficult with audiobooks. I have to resonate with the voice
Totally.
to 100%. Enjoy it, to be able to open to the book, and listening to you speaking, I feel like you know that's your jam. Like you know your voice has a resonance, as you were saying that back in the beginning. That just you know the walls drop and you start to imagine. You know you start to connect with what it is that you're sharing, and I think that's a beautiful reactivation of the joy of having our minds be in a space that are not organized, calibrated, you know, anything that can happen if we are listening, because we're not listening very much anymore either, as, you know. So I love that you're when you're sharing a story, is it coming from your... is it your channeling of a story, or are you reading a story? Do you write stories?
I mean, the stories, whatever story, I'm not reading the stories and I'm not writing the stories. Sometimes when I'm telling a story, it's a story that I've read or that I've heard, and then I am working with it, you know, like being with it. I feel like the stories are spaces that we inhabit, and we need to really move in before we can bring other people, you know, home. It's that sort of thing. It's like you really need to know the space, and
it's like absorbing it
yourself
before you can then go and
absolutely. So the stories that I'm retelling, I have to develop a relationship with before I feel comfortable to share them. Most, you know, I can tell a quick little parable or something, but like to really do it justice, I have to spend time with it myself before I'll tell it. And then the stories that I'm creating, I mean, I suppose they're inspired by the women's mysteries, the old ways of Indigenous culture and goddess worshipping, earth honouring culture. And so they're the stories that when I close my eyes and I imagine like this, who was Sarah? When I ask who was she, and then I close my eyes and I get an image of her standing up on a hill as a priestess, honouring the moon and the earth and her as a channel. And so, if she was a priestess and she stood up on a hill and honoured, so it's this sort of like unfolding conversation with soul. It's hard to define. Sometimes it's research. In this story, she does divination, like dream divination, and she does it with water. And I was like, well, how she weaves baskets and she divines dreams. How does she do that? So I looked up, well, how did they make a basket watertight in Samaria all those thousands of years ago? And they used tar, the same thing we use for the roads. They used like bituminous rock, and they would melt it into a paste. So I did the research to understand, how is this vision in my mind actually possible? So it's a combination of like the dream space, the imaginal collective consciousness realm, and then hard research of like
an element of remembering. I feel too.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. I love that when you, as you say, you dream it or envision it, and then you do the research, and there it is in the facts of the history, if you want to say that. That's a big one, but it's there in written word, and it just is like, it's like a connection with a spark, isn't it, of some kind?
Listening, it's a deep listening and responding.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Before we close this chapter,
I
wonder, something just popped in for me too. Have you ever heard of the Athena series?
No.
That just came in strongly. Well, I haven't actually read them, but my husband's read them, and it's about a mythical woman that, and just everything you just shared just then.
Yes.
It resonated with what he shared with me around these series of books. I can't remember who wrote them, but
Mists of Avalon is another one.
Yes,
that's a huge inspiration. And this story that I tell is, and I'm writing a book as well. And I can, as I'm writing, I'm like, seeing the inspiration, the different threads. That Mists of Avalon, the Red Tent.
I've heard about the Red Tent.
There's
Beautiful.
some books that even the Clan of the Cave Bear, like these books that have had such a huge influence on my worldview. They're powerful stories. Are powerful.
And I love when you mentioned before about Clarissa. I mean, that woman who ran with books. The woman who ran with wolves. She ran with books. That when that came out into the world, it was like boom. And then it just went underground for a while, and it's like come up again in a way that just speaks of the revival of everything that you're talking around today with.
When with the first storytelling group we had, half the women had in their bags the women who run with the wolves, because I told them to bring a story, so they all brought that book, because of course it's shaped a lot of our connection to story and our understanding of the power of them.
Absolutely. And you always bring in what you resonate most with, so of course you're going to get women.
Of course.
It's so beautiful. And I know a lot of our listeners are just going to love this podcast, because it's something completely different that we've
definitely
it's so beautiful.
We're kind of speaking into a magical mystery space
that's real.
Beautiful.
Yes, it's available.
I just want to ask before we wind up, what does Talia do to, with your day job and your passion and what you're building with your community, what does Talia do to nourish
myself? I drink tea. I play with my nephew. I make sure I make time for the relationships and the friends that nourish me. And I take a lot of time. I move slowly. I think that's the most nourishing thing for me personally, and the way that my constitution is, like spaciousness. This morning I had to rush out the door, and it's stressful. I keeping spaciousness is really nourishing for me, and I feel like I can do anything if I can do it slowly and calmly. I'm, so
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it can be that simple.
I can take a page out of that book.
Yeah. It's not simple, it's very mindful and intentional, conscious intent, isn't it, to choose that pace in this world.
Yes, it's definitely going against a grain.
Yeah. And it's everything that we've just talked about.
Yeah.
For our listeners, we are going to put all the info for Talia at the bottom of this podcast. If you're interested in jumping on her seed stories.
Yeah, so there'll be more storytelling workshops for people who are interested. I'll also be there'll be an online group because there are lots of people who are wanting it who aren't around. And if you want to hear the story I've been speaking a little bit about around Sarah and, what was her story, I'm going to be sharing that story in December.
Perfect.
So as in live?
Live.
Yay.
Yeah, live.
As in a community hall or?
At a beautiful space of a friend of mine in Mullumbimby.
Nice.
Fabulous.
On the 19th of December. I haven't quite put it out there yet, but
I love that.
It's out there now.
Yes, there we go.
So we'll put all the links down below for that too.
Yeah, beautiful. And I feel like you've kind of have a beautiful relationship with Sarah.
Yes.
And that she's coming through you in a way that's very special.
Yeah, I definitely... Yeah, I'm telling her story. She's asked me to, and that's the story. That's part of the story is how I went and I found her and she told me the story because that's how it feels.
And she wants it to be heard.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Spirit, she comes in my dreams.
Thank you for listening to our Girl Awakening podcast. We are also on YouTube as Girl Awakening. We'd love to see you there with comments on how our guests resonated with you or your own awakening. Please share the love with a like and subscribe while you're there. A blissful thank you to Ksenia Luki, the amazing artist behind our theme song. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.